Hi guys, this is I'm Stark and today we're looking at the League of Nations and its successes and failures. Now before we start, I would love it if you could please check out my brand new, awesome website, www.imstarkrevision.tk. There's a link below, so please click on that and just check it out. Great for your revision, great for me, happy days. Alright, anyway. Let's go on to League of Nations. So it's famously known really for its failure. So it was set up after World War One to try and keep peace in the world. Didn't really do that. However, there were some successes, and we'll start with that first. Let's give it a chance. So, for example, in 1921, the League managed to prevent a war between Finland and Sweden over the Åland Islands. They gave the islands to Finland, and this helped prevent a war between the two countries. And furthermore, after 10 years of work, the League managed to sign an international convention to combat the drugs trade. This law is still in action at the moment and has been since established in 1936. Now we're going to spend a bit more time on the failures of the League of Nations. So in 1923, Corfu, Mussolini ignored the League when they told him to pull out of Corfu. As a result, Greece had to pay Italy. And is a clear example of how the League struggled with the larger and more powerful nations. Furthermore, in 1921, the Poles invaded Vilna, that's the capital of Lithuania, and the League tried to tell the Poles to withdraw, but they refused. The League could do nothing to stop them. Now, the problem is that there are two main failures for the League. Well, firstly, the USA didn't actually join, and this really put them on the back foot. Straight away, even though it was Woodrow Wilson's idea in his 14-point plan, USA didn't join. That meant that the only strong nations were Britain and France, who didn't really, after a war, they didn't really want to have to spend money, use their troops for fighting. So that wasn't great. And then Russia weren't allowed in because of communism, and Germany weren't allowed in either. So again, not many strong things. So the membership was a problem. Furthermore, sanctions were also a problem. Now, the League didn't actually have its own military army, so it had to ask Britain and France every time, and they normally refused. The sanctions, therefore, were awful, especially because if they asked them to stop trade, USA could still trade with them because they weren't in the League. So those were probably the two main failures of the League of Nations, well, the two main things that made them a failure. But the other two main failures were both in Manchuria and Abyssinia. All right, and we'll go in and we're going to discuss these a little bit more now. So, Manchuria is in Japan, and it's where there was increasing probably due to the increasing population and the Wall Street crash. So the Japanese thought that the answer of this was to expand Japan into Manchuria. In September 1931, the Japanese claimed there was an explosion at Mukden. It was a perfect excuse for the Japanese, and soon they quickly defeated the Chinese at Mukden without permission. So the Chinese therefore appealed to the League of Nations, saying that it was an act of aggression. The League condemned Japan, however Japan just left the League and invaded Zhao. So, of course, that's not very effective sanctions, and they just simply left the League because, again, they didn't have to be in the League, and the sanctions couldn't be given, and they just went off and invaded another place. And you can see that they really were too slow to react. They were too weak, and, of course, the sanctions were awful. So the Lytton Commission actually issued its report a year later, and they condemned Japan 2 years after. They set up a whole commission, which made it take longer. The other failure I was talking about was the Abyssinian crisis. So Mussolini, it's Italy of course, Mussolini wanted Abyssinia because the Italians were embarrassed there in 1896, where they were beaten there. There was fertile lands there, mineral wealth. Mussolini was obsessed with the Roman Empire. He wanted to re-establish it, and his style of fascist leadership required military victories. In other words, he had to win some battles. So Mussolini, he starts the crisis, and he is a clash between Italian and Ethiopian troops. So Abyssinia is actually Ethiopia. So Mussolini claims it's Italian territory and wants apology and prepares for invasion. Now, in January 19th, so it happens from January 1935, the first stage, from January 1995 to October 1935. So Mussolini negotiates with the League while gaining support for war and shipping army to Abyssinia. So Britain and France don't take this situation that seriously. They actually don't close off the Suez Canal, which is an easy way to get down to Somalia, where they could get into Ethiopia or Abyssinia. Otherwise, they would have had to go all the way around Africa, and it wouldn't have been great for them. So we want good relations. The reason that Britain wanted, because they wanted good relationships with Mussolini as well as an ally against Hitler. So Hitler's rising power, and they really want to be on the good side. So they're not going to stop him. They actually signed a pact with him and allowing him half of Abyssinia. So they signed the Stresa Pact with Mussolini, and that's a formal protest versus Germany and rearmament. But the problem is, people begin to sympathise for Abyssinia, and British elections coming out, the politicians promise to get tough. Hoare, the foreign minister, makes a speech about defending small nations. However, nothing is done, and that's the story of the League of Nations the whole way through. So, of course, I said about how the Suez Canal was owned by Britain and France, and it wasn't close to American ships, and this meant that Italy could supply their army, and Britain and France were just too scared of a war with Italy. That's the one thing Britain and France did not want. That was another war, and if this was going to risk another war, then they wouldn't do anything. That's why they were being a bit too nice. So Britain and France were going behind lead back, and they wanted to make a deal with Mussolini. However, this was leaked to the press, and Britain and French people saw it as a treachery versus the League. So, of course, what happens? Oh yeah, nothing. Alright? And this ultimately gives other leaders hope, like fascists like Hitler. Straight after, in 7th of March 1936, he marches into Rhineland. So France, now scared of Hitler, will do anything to make Italy happy. The actual Haile Selassie actually flees to Bath. But the League just watches helplessly. And then Britain and France make deal with Italy to strengthen position versus Hitler. However, in November 1936, Italy signs alliance with Hitler. This is called the Rome-Berlin Axis. So ultimately, the League was set up to make peace, but they didn't actually do anything when it really mattered. And eventually, fascists like Mussolini and Hitler broke them apart, went behind their back and did things, and the League were helpless to stop them. So thank you for watching. Please can you check out my website. Please like and subscribe. Thanks, and see you soon.